Um, troubled notes, some have in the right place and some don't have them quite in the right place. Some are too free to write troubled notes, where troubled notes to us means that you're really in trouble. That's what they were intended for, that you're really in trouble. And so rethink your troubled notes. And some of you who so seldom or never write troubled notes, then you probably have them in the right place. Some of you who might write them too frequently might realize that sometimes if you held it overnight and reread it under a fresh glance, you might maybe see it a little differently and give yourself a chance to get a little better control of the vehicle rather than letting the troubled note be just a vehicular influenced note. Do you understand that? And on suspected strike, we'd like for the suspected strike, of course, is now the note that you write when you realize that you have lost a match or had a near loss, like you didn't win a match to your satisfaction. And that's the suspected strike. But it has to do with yourself, not to do with anybody else. So from this point, nobody writes suspected strikes about anyone else, only about themselves in regards to your own match. And also, it wouldn't hurt for you to let your suspected strikes accumulate for a week before you send them, and give you a little bit better examination of yourself, and let you see what you see the changes that you permit your vehicle to go through over that period of time. Do you follow me? So you go ahead and write your suspected strike, or write your notes on it, or whatever you want to do, so that you will have it with what you want to write at the end of your week. Now, the week doesn't have to begin and end for everyone at the same time. It'd be kind of too much homework for Lena. So your week begins at your first sign of a suspected strike. And then you make a note of that date, and 1 week from then you send your suspected strike, even if it's only one, or no matter how many there are on there. And don't forget, a suspected strike is any time that you and a match is anything where you are not exerting the control that you want to in the particular area that you know you need control. Whether it's giving in to an itch when you know you have a real discipline with an itch problem, or do you know what we're saying? Anything that is a discipline for you to control, then that's going to end up being, if you did not control it to your satisfaction, then that would be suspected strike. Okay? Did I leave out anything? Okay, now we want to hear some questions from you all.
Where we came from, if I understood what you said, in the segment you said that level. And in a sense, I've been thinking of as the next level was just the higher group of people. That the place encompasses two stratas that sort of coexist.
Well, it encompasses more than two stratas, and only some would coexist with only younger ones, and occasionally maybe instructor-type tasks would cause those who were already in next level vehicles to coexist with ones who were graduates from the completion of a kingdom level, of a human kingdom or human equivalent. Now, your brain can get kind of confused at this point. If you remember what we said to try to help you clarify it there is that you're a missing link. Right now you are in the missing link stage. But if you were a graduate, if you were still in the graduate vehicle, part of what you would learn would be that there is a missing link stage, and that what you're moving into, you cannot move into in the vehicles they were in, no matter how refined they were, or how developed they were, or how free of disease and so forth, so that they might even they might be in a position where if the next level wanted to, they could make them indestructible, make them whatever the word is, immortal or something. But they would know that other members of the next level, ones who were already in next level vehicles, they would know that their wisdom and their intelligence was far greater than theirs because of what they were capable of doing. And so they would have a respect for them and try to learn from them. But they would not know some of the characteristic behavioral patterns of those who were in next level vehicles. And that fits with why we've said that while you're in this condition, it's so important that you learn those behavioral patterns so well, because they're going to be a part of the chips, or the spaces for chips in your new vehicle. And those, that's another story. But does that clarify anything to you? Now, there are other older members who would seldom, if ever, associate with even some of the members of the next level who have next level vehicles and who would still be beginners in those next level vehicles. There are older members who have gone way beyond that. And we aren't capable of knowing how many stratas of vehicles there are, or what changes take place vehicularly in those stratas, because they may not be vehicles that change. It might be that the vehicle, or there might be one other vehicular change, but it might be that the vehicle that you're going to get is going to have capacity far greater than, it'll be just like even take down at the human kingdom level. You all know that the brain, only a small part of it is really active and used. Okay, but let's assume that when you're a graduate from the human kingdom, maybe most of that brain is in use when you're ready to be a graduate. Well, unless you're moving into a vehicle that is a whole world above that, but you might be, what you will be capable of doing with that vehicle might be a very small capacity, or a small portion of its capacity. And how great and how far that vehicle is capable of going, we don't see, and we don't really feel like you need to concern yourselves with it.
Do the younger members members up there know that they're trying to get to be older members? I mean, do they realize that it's a growth path for them?
Well, they don't know that they can learn, and they will learn, just like you learned while you were in a graduate vehicle. You learned that there was a process that would one day come your way that would offer you the opportunity to gain a vehicle that would be capable of doing things that members of the next level who had that kind of vehicle could do. And so you were looking forward to that day when you would have a chance to get vehicles with that capacity, because while you were in a graduate vehicle, you would see but not understand. You could observe things that they were doing with their vehicles and wonder how in the world they could do it, and yet it was natural function for them, a normal function for them.
Did I know what I was going to do before I came? Like, did the next level just pick out people that they thought were deserving? Did I know, did my vehicle that I was in before know that I was going to do this?
Yes. Your vehicle knew that you were going to next level, let you know, kind of like that you were on the list, you were on the dean's list, and you had a chance to earn a vehicle, and that if the vehicle was earned, that you would have all kinds of capabilities that you had not previously had.
Some time ago, we asked the people to prop themselves when they sit on their back. I don't know if let's not do that, okay? Just as an update, because it's like you can't hold your head up or something.
Now, same thing as when sometimes we still see heads, chins going, arms.
Okay. Good.
You spoke before last about how much example was realistic when you described what would be the possibility for a transformation of a vehicle. I was trying to make sure I understood each minute that vehicle could come out in the different ways it could be changed. That it might look just vaguely like the vehicle facial looks weird that went in before you put in the machinery that changed it. I wanted to be sure whether or not that was indeed the way we should be thinking about how this next level vehicle was going to get done. It's not that it's already there and ready and there's just
That's right.
over.
That's
It's
right.
going to be
That's right. We did actually mean to tell you in the first meeting that it is appropriate for us to think of it in that way at this time. It doesn't mean we won't get a greater understanding or even find out that that's not right, but we feel that it's right, so we know that it is right for this time, for you to think of it in that way, and we're not saying to think of it in that way for now because we see something else. We actually see as that's the way it's going to be, but that's not to say that that can't change. But we do actually feel that when this change takes place, it would be just as you entered a room and they put you on a table and the machine came down on you and they put you through all kinds of change, and the machine comes up and the shell with it, all the poison and the residue and the chrysalis, the cocoon, and they say, okay, stand up. You get up, and you may not resemble the height that your vehicle was before. In fact, you probably won't resemble the height that your vehicle was before.
Well, that's worth another 4 feet.
Well, think that you take all that away, what's left?
Well, it might be that. How much work is it? Maybe.
And of course, some of it they might send over to another table that's stretched.
We're only joking. Everybody?
I was wondering, in regards to the same topic, by now, are less refined than the vehicles, the human-type vehicles we graduated into when they stopped being. What is the significance of using this kind of municipal vehicle to convert rather than one that was perhaps four-wheel drive?
You don't know
Oh,
the answer
my
to that.
goodness. That should be.
You think about that answer.
You think about that. You ought to be able to figure that one out. Well, I could.
Anybody want to answer that? Dorota, you want to answer that?
They do, but it seems like strength that would take force of mind to overcome a vehicle that's so primitive. It would take a lot more effort and build a lot more strength in order to find it.
The experiences that you need to do this task. In other words, this is the process. This is the way it's supposed to happen, and it's the only way. Because if you stayed in the next level, you wouldn't accomplish anything.
No, now there are certain elements of the vehicle that you now possess, that you now are in. There are certain elements of that vehicle that by the time you finish doing your discipline on that vehicle, there are certain characteristics of even this vehicle that would be beyond your graduate vehicle.
What you had to relearn was things that you had overcome. In other words, when you all started this, you had become so naive and so gentle, and you could be conned so easily. I don't mean by, I'm talking about ways of the world. And you could be shown things and look at it and say, oh, that's so wonderful, and want to become a part of it, but yet there was something that held you back. But it was just until you got ready to do the task that, in other words, you were being held back because of the task that you had to do. But until then, it was okay for you to do whatever you needed to do. But even now, some of you, a lot of you have overcome this, but still, you can see humans who can con you. And they can flatter the vehicle and make the vehicle seem so important. And you can almost fall into the trap. But you don't. Even though you might feel pulled toward it. You know what I'm saying? You might waver a little bit, but yet you still hang on to your task.
And those vehicles, those graduate vehicles, don't have the knowledge in them that you have right now. And this knowledge is going to be transferred from this vehicle into the vehicle that this one's going to become. And those graduate vehicles did not have that knowledge, nor did those graduate vehicles have the experience of the sweat and effort and agony that it took to go many generations in the space of a few years. And because they didn't exert that effort. Those graduate vehicles became, in their refined condition, over a breathing period of years and years and years, and of learning from the doctors that it was healthier to do this, and from the psychologists it was healthier to do this, and even the disciplines and the ways they changed their conduct was learned over a slow, long period. So they don't know anything about those vehicles that you had, knew nothing about this extreme effort experience, the change from 110 to 220, which you got in this condition, and is the only way you can get it. And that's what's going to drive this vehicle after it's changed over.
There's no problem.
In the twinkling of an eye.
Thinking that it takes a lot more strength. I guess I had a wrong idea of what those vehicles are like, plus the fact that this is kind of a special task that doesn't come around very often, then those individuals who are in the more refined human type vehicles, they're just more or less stuck in those vehicles until this opportunity
That's right.
That's
They
what
cannot
they're
do, they
talking
cannot do it by taking sperm and eggs from them and putting it in a lab experiment and making bodies.
Plus, it has to happen in combination with other tasks. In other words, the next level would never do this for this reason only. So you common sense test, your logic, whatever you want to call it, would tell you that what you're doing, your major task, is to do what needs to be done for this garden. And in the process of doing that major task, you are doing what you need to do for yourself, which comes second. In other words, it's always first the next level task. The second is for yourself.
This is in how, if I remember correctly, you had the idea in the beginning of this class that we were building a body that was made out of mind. In other words, it was hard to explain at that time because I guess you're...
No, actually, at the beginning of the class, we were explaining it more like we're explaining it right now.
We knew more than we thought we knew.
No, it wasn't the mind body. It was a physical metamorphosis. And that's what this actually is, even though the mechanics of the techniques and the advanced medical world of the next level is going to put you through that metamorphosis. But actually, all they do is the cleanup. You're doing most of the work right now. That's why it's so important that you do it well, because when you get in the machine, they aren't going to do any of the unfinished work for you. All they do is sort things out, take away the bad and leave what's left, and move your well. That's all. They just take away the bad and leave what's left, and then the machine opens up, and there you are. And it's like you're going to march out of there, and you'll look at somebody else, and you'll see there'll be a little glimmer of recognition. No, this we're kidding. This is true. Oh, by the side. But we really do feel that there will be a little recognition, that you will have a little recognition, and that you will not lose any of your higher consciousness. You will only, that's the reason your higher consciousness has to be so big, because you want to have plenty of consciousness. Do you follow what we're saying?
Let me tell you something that might be a little bit of consolation for you. I really believe that a lot of individuals should have been sitting in this room right now, other than just you all. Now, because they're not sitting here, your task is much more difficult, because it's like the world is divided up into 35 parts. And you all have 1/35 of the world on your shoulders, which means that your task is pretty heavy. Now, if you do your task to the best of your ability, what does that do to what you need to do in the next level? I mean, what does it do to your body that you're building? So you figure...
Now, wait a minute, because I'm going to finish the sentence if you don't know what he's saying. The answer is that you are having, by their not doing their task, you're having an opportunity to become considerably greater than you would have had they all done what they were supposed to do.
Now, if you ever think that your load gets pretty heavy, just say, well, why wouldn't it be heavy? With the load that I have, 1/35 of the world, you know. And, but the advantage is that every little bit that you conquer has that much greater importance. You see what I'm saying? So it really should be a consolation to you to know that if you win one match, just think what it has done to you. But then you're not supposed to think if you lose it, what it has done to you. Because you don't know how much of it you have gained. And so therefore, keep your eyes on your task. Take your 1/35 of the world and handle it the best that you can. and the rest will take care of itself. But in a sense, it's an advantage for you to have so few in your class, even though it's pretty difficult. Can you see what I'm saying?
There are none outside of this class that are going to go lie on the table and have the machine come down. I'll tell you that for sure. There are none that they would even be able to walk into the room.
They wouldn't consider it. Otherwise, we wouldn't have to be here. They would not tie us up on a task like this because I'm sure we could do other things. And so the next level, they just don't waste manpower. If you all could do it without older members being with you, we would not be sitting here right now. It's as simple as that. Scotty?
Can I say something else? This is off the subject. I'll try to be as fast with it as I can so that you can get back to your questions about it. I feel like the Flexody incident, when we tried to, when Flexody asked us to not let her make a mistake and lose out, and in a sense, we also felt like we were hoping that she would snap out of it because we knew so desperately what the result for her would be if she could snap out of it. But the experience with that circumstance also taught us very clearly that an older member cannot take that control from the younger member. It's like, and I'll tell you even this, like if which can't happen, but this is theory, okay? I'm telling you theory. Like if I walked away from T as an older member, if I walked away from T, who is an older member, and said, I quit, even if this whole operation fell, T could not stop me. Because that would be my falling at stake. Can you follow that? And that's the way it is with older members. That's the way it is with younger members. Your growth depends upon this is back to the last table, your committal to older members. Everything moves forward on the basis of your committal to older members. Now, I know that I could never walk away from that committal. And yet, now let's take the team of this task. We know, and it was also made clear in the Flexody incident, that we cannot, in spite of our desire to help someone finish something, who has even said, don't let me make a mistake and lose out, it was made clear to us that that cannot happen, that it's wrong. In other words, the younger member can still always ruin his opportunity of progress. And the older member cannot interfere with it. The older member has to still work on the basis. In other words, your eyes have to always be upward. And anytime your eyes start getting on the same level that you're on, or beneath that level, then your connection upward becomes weaker. Okay, now you really understand that picture? If you get your eyes on each other, or you get your eyes on humans, or that human task, your connection with your older member always becomes more fragile, becomes weaker. And if you want that tube connection, that umbilical cord connection with the older member to be in its healthiest condition, then you've got to be sure that 100% of your eyes and effort is never on the same strata that you are on, never with any of your equals, any of your peers, nor never beneath you, but only on older members. And that gets right down to practical application of, like we've said in the last meeting, on that last tape. And like funny thing is, some of you may still think that T and Do still do certain things as residual of the humanness of their vehicle. Or you still act that way, you still must think that subconsciously. And we don't. But you don't know that. But some of you may know that, or may be coming to know that we don't do those things. We don't eat a piece of candy like a human would do it. We don't choose the candy like a human. Even like these vehicles would have done it. And we don't, our humor, anything else that we do, none of it is like the vehicle would have done it. And if you want to be like the older member, because your eyes are only on the older member, you will want to do everything that you do as the older member is doing in that circumstance, because that circumstance is the classroom you're in at the moment. Can you follow that? For as long as you are with us, then you want to take advantage of everything you can of that particular opportunity of learning. And you would want to do precisely what we do. Everything, to the way you wear your clothes or anything else that you do. Anything you do. Because, and if you can't see it that way, then you're still seeing us do those things as a residual of humanness. If you knew where we were coming from as we did those things, you would want to do them exactly as we do. Now, can you understand that? If you can't, think about it. Okay, let's go back to your questions.
When we were in graduate vehicles, I guess I assumed we had some sort of identification, like a name. And now we're an ODI, and I think when Wyoming, we got the ODIs, that you mentioned it was a family name, I remember that. And does this mean that our new vehicle, what comes out of the Christmas, is that going to have then a different name, or is it going to be some sort of a holdover identification?
It'll probably be a frequency.
It probably, in other words, these are all symbolism. This is equivalent. How it's going to actually be, we don't know. But for you to think that in that terms you just mentioned, like a part of this element or this group, because there is a commonness of the class having survived that transition. There will be a commonness that you'll feel for a long, long, long time in the next level. And there will be probably some identity commonness of those that completed that class on Earth between years X and X. And but whether or not it will have what the spelling of it will be, or whether or not it will be pronounced in any given way, or how the identity will, what it will actually be, we don't know, because what we have given you is just a facsimile of it. Okay? So that's an update on that. We don't know what you'll be called, but we might have fun sometimes if we passed you someplace of saying, well, hi, Lagodi, which would remind you of that class time. Even though your identity might be a completely different world, because you're moving into a different brain. What's gonna be in this vehicle when you come out of that machine is going to be a whole different set of operations.
Your transmission will be so different that there won't be any reason to be concerned. In other words, you belong to that group, so to speak, once you come out of that machine. And whether you have an identifying name doesn't matter. And but there will be some form of identification, but I don't think you need to be worried about it. I mean, concerned about it. Not that you are, but I mean, think of other things because they're really more important. And in a sense, I think the way people greet each other in the next level is entirely different than now. What reason would you have to call anybody by name? Or hey you, or
Well,
anything like that? Do you see what I'm saying?
supposing somebody in headquarters wants to talk to so-and-so.
Well, there'd be an identification
Their
there.
identification, I want to talk to whoever.
Well, I don't see you can't compute
No,
what it's like there.
no.
And all you can compute is what you know here. And they have methods, and I can see where they would never have to call anybody by name, what I know. And I know that they would never call anybody on the telephone. You know what I'm saying?
It wouldn't have to be as primitive as a PA system or a
And
telephone.
it is a sitting, Goody call, I call him, it wouldn't be like that at all. And, just wait.
I tell you though, the prepping that you're doing for that area is still the control of your thoughts, the control of your own transmissions, not putting your nose where it doesn't belong, not being interested in things that are not your task to be interested in, not having thoughts that, if they were read, would be inappropriate for the moment. That's why it's so important on what you control in your head as well as what you control comes out of your mouth, because that if you're occupying so much time with thoughts that would not be appropriate at the moment in this new vehicle, then all that's going to be vacuum in that new vehicle. You're going to have very little to add to that chip that would be for controlled discrimination on what you transmit and what you receive and where your curiosity is and so forth. Can you understand that? So the strength in that little chip would be weak. It would be very weak and young, and because nothing's going to go in there that you have not properly learned. So you have properly, only the degree of what you have properly learned will be what will be occupying that space. Can you follow that?
Changing for vehicle. Came across my brain that what happened with Jesus when he seemed like he went someplace and had some kind of conversion happen in his vehicle. Was that a different circumstance, or it sounds similar to what you're describing as far as what I've read and heard in the past?
Well, we don't know, but we've talked about how it might have been possible that he was in or his vehicle had been changed when he reappeared to them and they didn't recognize him, and when he could do things that they couldn't do.
It also occurred to me that I don't know if it's been an update with what you know about your vehicle.
Well, let us say another word about what he may not have actually transmitted voice sounds to them that made them recognize his voice, but he knew how to put out the thoughts that would make them think they were hearing his voice, and so they would hear his voice and say, "Oh, that's you." And do you follow that? Because of the strength of his mind and because of their level of perception. And since he knew their level of perception, he could easily speak to them on their own terms, though he might be using a different mechanism to speak with. Now go ahead with your question.
Well, that seems like it could have gone either way in that circumstance. He might have just went back into his old next level body. But in your circumstance,
What is that? Gone back into his old next
well, the one that he left to begin with, because it sounded like he was an older next
Oh,
level
yes,
member.
that's right. We don't know. We don't know.
So the circumstance with your vehicles would be, you don't know.
We don't know.
But ours,
We know more about you than we do about what could happen to us.
okay, good.
ones that their decision to take them to become graduates into the next level, are those going to be, are they going to have a bit more knowledge that our vehicles did when they graduated? In other words, are the standards gradually being upgraded for entry into the next level?
Well, that's an interesting question, because the way I've heard T talk many times is that the standards are always being raised. In other words, that all kingdom levels are being refined. In other words, that even lower kingdom levels expand and improve even at lower kingdom levels within the design of how the gardener plans that. But as to how much conscious memory, there won't be any conscious memory of that identity, but it will awaken to extremely accelerate the process of getting towards that graduation day. And the funny thing is that if these tapes and things are preserved, let's say, for enough generations for them to be near that graduation day, then the vehicles that are occupying that identity that is now in your vehicle, they will have a sense of knowing more than anyone else as these tapes get toward the advanced stage. They will have a sense of knowing. Only because we have shared with them this information to this degree. Now, believe it or not, we see by your questions a lot of times that your vehicle's identity, to a sense, still inhibits your getting this information to any degree at the level that we're trying to give it to you. And in a sense, as you reach for it, it will help you develop better, and it also, at the same time, prohibits if you could see what we see as we see it, the identity would know too much. But that may not be true, because we may not be here long enough to give information to it that would be too much. Like the last tape that we said we're going to destroy at the end of a week. We felt like that it would cause too much confusion, certainly in the early stages of those who might hear it after we leave. It would cause too much confusion. But it may not, it wouldn't probably cause any confusion to the identity of these vehicles if by the time they had awakened to a considerable degree. But see, the big test comes at the moment of encounter of the third kind, of when the graduates when the next level actually moves in and has a degree of contact with the kingdom level beneath them, and then they begin to learn from them and have respect from them. You follow? Because in a sense, as you think back now, we said that you came from the next level. The more accurate clarification of that would be you came from associating with older members. You came from having been in a world that was under the next level's literal control, and where they were managing the ship. And because in other words, it might be that at a given time toward the end of the graduation period, where the next level comes in and takes control, actually takes control. And soon the so-called advanced humans begin to realize it's the best thing ever happened to them, even though they might, we don't know what transition they might go through at that initial thing, or how that will be introduced. We don't know how that will be introduced. We don't even know that the next level knows at this time time, how they will do that at this civilization's time when it reaches that point, because there's too much that could. What it actually meant. Yes, and the humans who receive it before your identities come into. Now we don't know what the next level has in store with the identities of your vehicles. We don't know exactly how they will use them, or how long it will take for them to be introduced, or to come into maturity into an adult human vehicle. But whatever humans should have a hold of this material prior to then would just, well, number one, we think that they'll be very, very captivated by the exit, and therefore the exit would cause them to have a very serious interest in the material. Okay, and but they could. And during the time that they're waiting for, or during the time until some of those identities come into maturity, they will probably create a lot of distorted interpretations and a superstitious approach to the meaning. Because whether you all realize it or not, a lot of what we say to you and have said to you on these tapes, if you said them to somebody out there. Now, on the other hand, there are some humans out there right now that if they could discipline themselves enough to listen to what is on those tapes without deciding because they hear one tape that they don't like what it says and shutting it off. But there are some humans out there that if they listened all the way through without shutting their minds off, they would recognize this is the greatest information that ever. I'm not talking about religiously. From an intelligent point of view, they would say, this makes more sense than anything. I knew that there was something wrong. T and I today were in a circumstance where we overheard a couple of women talking. And one of them said to the other one, have you talked much about death lately? And the other one said, well, no, I don't know that I have. And the first one said, well, my husband goes to church and teaches some Sunday school class once in a while, or he just recently taught one about death. And she said, I have the hardest time really buying that I'm going to go to heaven on whatever basis of goodness I was, and I have an awfully hard time answering my children's questions regarding death and heaven. And she said, and I'm beginning to wonder if all this effort that we're putting out in this life, is it going to be worth anything? Where is it leading to where it has any value? And I'm thinking about that time she was could tell that the other girl wasn't that interested in what she was saying, and so she began to lose interest. Now, what we're saying is there are a lot of humans out there who will be even early sponges to a lot of degree of this information if they can stop from letting their preconceived notions keep interrupting their receptivity. Because if they could actually listen and receive, even on a theoretical basis, in other words, if they would just say, well, I'm going to give this information since the thing I saw happened, since I actually saw some people go up in this thing and go, then I'm going to give this information a thorough hearing as much as I can and try very hard to listen to it. If they were capable of listening to it, and I hope they're listening right now, if they were capable of listening all the way through and really taking it by the time they heard the last tape, and say, this is what we've been waiting for all this time. Now, we know that the information that they could glean from these tapes is still nothing more to them than an excellent motivator toward developing in the right direction, preparing for that day when they will have an encounter, because they will have developed. In other words, they could shorten the years. My brain keeps thinking of the prophecy. Do you follow that? Because if they listen, they could shorten the years. What would have been the years had this not happened. They could shorten those years to a very few generations in being prepared to be graduates. And what they will be, their lingo will be, we're going to become graduates. We're going to prepare for that day when they will come and coexist with us, and we can learn from them. Do you follow that? Now, the masses were probably distorted into some things that they will work on becoming, but will not see what you see when you hear those words. It's just like when we recently saw a movie that we were going to try to see if it would be okay for you to see, and it was King David. And it's ridiculous, and we wouldn't have you see it. But it disturbs us so that we can even hear them quote the things they quote. And we will know that it means one thing, and yet they have a completely different meaning. And the meaning that they apply to it doesn't even mean anything to them. It just has some spiritual significance. It makes them feel holy or something by applying that meaning. But it's obvious it doesn't mean anything to them, just like this little woman who said that. I just can't quite buy that concept that is existing in the church regarding that. But that's probably more than an answer to your question.
You may have already answered that. I'm kind of wondering if my next question is up. You know, let's come back a little further. I thought you said your test was guaranteed because of your age and your experience, and you couldn't take your test because you were too old to fail the test. So that's why I was like,
Well, see, I can't buy that. But I have to buy it. We did say that. And I have to buy it, but I can't buy it. I'm a schizophrenic on that topic because we don't ever assume our forward motion. We don't ever assume. We can't even assume now. We don't assume at this moment that we are doing the best job we can do on this task. We don't trust and say, well, they know where we are at this time, and we're doing a great job because we wouldn't have been sent if we weren't doing a great job. It's the opposite. What feeds us is the desperate fear almost that we're not doing enough fast enough, that we're not moving fast enough and as thorough as we'd like to.
It does say what we meant that if all of you all dropped away, we would not be blamed for that.
That's
as
right.
long as we did the best that we could. And but we fight like crazy to help you in every way that we can so you can do your task. Our brains are going constantly when we leave you figuring out what we can do to help you. And but we never, like Joe said, we never assume that, oh well, that's on you all, we got it made.
Yeah, we're on the track and we're moving at the right pace and all that. Great.
We never, it doesn't enter a moment. But anyway, what was your question?
well, to go along with that, you kind of interrelate well where, there's 35 of us connected to a stream out there. What like the next level thinking have a device that they have the individual cover all the traffic, we cover the whole world, 10 people. We have 3 in Hampton, like, each one of us, they would have nuclear backup for people.
Well,
Sure.
I don't know if you'll remember, we've said to you a time or two in the past that you might have even had areas introduced to you that were latent, almost non-existent areas for you to work on that maybe could have been worked on by some of those who are no longer with us in order for those areas to be worked on. Did you follow that? We have said at times that you might we brought this up and some of you said that I can't understand why I have to deal with certain things that I never had to deal with. You know, it's like, and where is that? Is that foreign? Is that latent? Is it just blooming in this vehicle because it never had to deal with those things? And we said, well, it might be latent. It might be a time capsule, late blooming difficulties that you're having to work with, or it might be that you, by some method of the next level, are assuming some of the areas of load that would have been handled by others.
I want to correct something I said. Actually, you don't have 1/35 of the world. You only have 1/35 of whatever territory that's involved in this trend.
Of the segment that
But
is...
it's still big.
That's right. You've got 1/35 of the large segment that would be considered the top class,
Right.
the
Ones that are in the
top
top
strata, the top strata of the human kingdom. Now, don't try to figure out how that would be identified, or you know,
You see how
spend
big
your time
it
on
is?
other things.
Bigger than all of us. So don't even think about yourself. Are you?
I think I saw something real simple I wanted to check if I see it right. When you were talking about curiosity, just communication, would it be right to think that if I train myself to not be curious while I'm in this class, and when I get into my new vehicle, I'll automatically know where to be curious.
Well, what we meant is don't have any petty curiosity. Don't have any lower curiosity. There are certain healthy types of curiosity, and that is the curiosity of how can I have better strategy. I'm very curious to learn how I can have better strategy. And how can I nip that in the bud? That kind of curiosity. How can I improve every little aspect? That kind of curiosity is healthy, and you want to increase it. You don't want to have the kind of curiosity that is nosiness or is petty or is gossipy. That kind of curiosity. That's what we were talking about.
In other words, you've got to believe, one, that what you're supposed to know, you will know. If you don't know it, then you weren't supposed to know it. But you should be open to the fact that whatever is to come my way is going to come my way.
Now, that doesn't mean that your strategy on improvement is going to just come your way. That kind of curiosity you've got to pull in, and you've got to draw upon what he's saying in the information. Like, let's say we gave these some information on doing a certain thing, and you were curious about it, but you weren't involved in it, and it wasn't given to you. That kind of curiosity is inappropriate. That's out of place. Because if it was meant for you, it would be either given to you directly or given to someone to give to you. And that's what he meant, that knowledge will come to you that is intended for you. But the kind of curiosity that will help you improve your strategy and help you get better control of your vehicle, and all that comes by your effort and exploring the possibility and reviewing the ways that we have taught you that you can get better control.
Now, being curious about the knowledge that you hear on the tape, that's the right kind of curiosity. But to question somebody by giving them the third degree, so to speak, on and then what did they say? And then what happened? You know, that's kind of on the human level.
Right.
and you don't need to go to that extent.
Even your curiosity about what your vehicle is going to be like after this is over, a little tiny bit of it is okay, but beyond that, it's too much. It's wasting time that needs to be spent on something else.
You've got your mind on something else when it should be on.
You don't want to worry, if my mother is going to have shoes, what kind of shoes? It's going to have a weight?
Just like when we first told you about this, many of you, and I say many because quite a few of you, worried about not growing anything. I've been so bad that I probably don't have anything going in that direction. But see, there's no way for you to know this. But if you keep your eye on your task, I can guarantee you that you will do exactly what you're supposed to do. Come out of that machine much bigger than like that. Okay?
You know, when Jesus said to his disciples, "Do you love me?" And they said, "Oh, yeah, Lord, we love you." They said, "Well, then do my job. You know, feed machine. Do it." And when we say, if you love the next level, if you love older members as representatives of your next level, then you will do the tasks that are given to you. You will primarily do the task that is now an extreme gift to you, and that is this period of preparation for your transformation. That is a major task that if you do it well, the other tasks happen automatically.
Okay. Somebody?
If I remember correctly, in one of the previous days, you talked about the next level vehicles we had previously in our minds in those vehicles and then physically conditioned onto building a next level vehicle. And I think you also mentioned that, if I heard it right, possibly we were in a condition at that time with our previous vehicles of either not trusting our own minds too much, and I think you may have also mentioned that the 3 lessons that you gave us on the previous day may have applied to that lesson that we need to learn with this task. And I don't know if my thinking has been, if I've been accepting that in the right way, but does that mean that my next level mind or the chips in my previous next level vehicle looked
Well, let's say in your graduating vehicle.
in the graduating vehicle, yes. I guess I was just kind of shocked and thinking, gosh, I had mistakenly assumed perhaps that because I remember the next level in a graduating vehicle, that I already knew how to look to an old member and how to not trust my own mind.
Okay, you do know to a degree how to look to an older member, but you've got 2 different mechanisms. Any older member or any member of the next level that was in a next level vehicle that associated with you prior to this task had a safeguard because your mechanisms didn't match. Now, he could understand your mechanisms. You couldn't understand his mechanisms. The parts of his mechanisms, the parts of your mechanisms, a lot of parts of your mechanisms he wouldn't zero down into because any more than you would bother zeroing, or this vehicle would bother zeroing down into the mechanisms of an ape or a dog. Now, at early stages, like some of these are now doing, they are zeroing down into the mechanism of a chimpanzee and so forth. But that's early stages. But your vehicle would not. Now, even though your graduating vehicle has learned to respect those who have next level, or had to learn to respect those who had next level vehicles, and to look to them, they knew nothing about controlling their thoughts. Or really serious restraint. They knew theirs was more of a kind of restraint of knowing how not to fist fight, how not to have blatant hostility with each other, or those members of the next level in those vehicles would not have moved into their company. In other words, they were refined to the extent that they knew how to live in peace and order and respect those who knew more than they knew, and so to that degree they were looking to older members, but not looking at the way you're learning to look to older members. They didn't know that kind of thing. They only knew how to be respectful if an older member came into the room because he knew what was going on and you didn't. But his different mechanism protected him from all that was going on in your head. Can you see that? Because he didn't have a receiver for that. He didn't have a receiver for that.
Vehicle and the experience of his mind.
What's that?
That would be because of
The vehicle itself did not even have the mechanism to be affected in an adverse way by the thought and lack of behavior and information and so forth of the lower vehicle. They were protected in that way. Even though still there was not a graduating vehicle that was refined enough that those in next level vehicles were still not, it was still a task to be with them. It was still, it literally was a task to be with them, even though it was a tolerable task. Can you follow that? It would be like well, I can't think of a good parallel, but they knew that they weren't in any danger, and they knew that you respected them because you were that advanced, and they knew that you were learning from them, but they could not teach you what this task teaches you. They couldn't put you in circumstances where you could learn it. Only in this circumstance can you learn it.
Well, what your tasks are in the next level is entirely different than what you're doing now.
That's right.
But what Doe's talking about has many loopholes in it. I mean, he's talking to you, he's taking keywords and leaving out a whole lot. And so it really is something that needs to be discussed at a later time, if at all. But you've got to remember that the vehicle the members of the next level who have taken on next level vehicles, very seldom do they come in contact with new graduates or any younger members in the next level, if they have not taken new vehicles. What they would probably come in contact with more would be the ones who have graduated and been in the next level a long time and are probably just about ripe to take on new vehicles and just waiting for that opportunity. See what I'm saying? So you can't just say, well, this is how it is, and this is how it is, because there are all levels.
No, right.
There are so many levels, and you can call it class distinction or a status position or whatever you want to call it. But it isn't for any reason other than the lack of communication.
Right.
And so therefore you would never be placed with someone who is in this position and somebody in this position.
Even if we knew a lot to tell you in this area, it wouldn't be of any real value to you. And like T said a moment ago, I'm not sure it's even worth getting into that much, because this effort needs to be spent on getting us out here faster. And knowing that information is not going to get us out of here any faster. That's curiosity that to have a little bit of is okay, but forget about it.
In other words, and this isn't a put down,
No.
it's just getting your priorities in the right place and work on your task. Don't try to go beyond what you need to know. It's not going to add anything to your vehicle.
Occupy your brain with how can I move faster?
If you will listen to the tape and try to learn from it, but not to create any new ideas of the future that we haven't discussed. In other words, you will know it,
Yeah, apply what we've given you. That's how you move faster.
but listen to these tapes because you will get something out of those tapes every time you listen to them. We cannot believe that you would not, because what you are today, surely you are the same tomorrow. Right? So why wouldn't you have a greater understanding tomorrow if you listen to today's tape? So don't put yourself down in that way. And if you don't listen to the tape, like if you get up and walk out of the room when the tapes are played, then you're putting yourself down. If you say, well, I stayed awake all during the meeting, I know what they talked about. I don't need to listen to it again. Well, if you do that, then you're putting yourself down.
I know that we could learn a lot even hearing them again and again.
Right?
Yes.
Wait, say your question.